Change is often romanticized. People talk about turning over a new leaf, starting fresh, making resolutions, or committing to becoming their best self. But what Owen Hermstring points out in The Law Behind the Laws is that the vast majority of these efforts fail, not because people are lazy or undisciplined, but because they're operating under an illusion. The illusion that surface-level action is enough. Hermstring calls this the mirror illusion, the belief that if you can just change your behaviors or your environment, your life will follow suit. But what's actually reflected back to you, your relationships, opportunities, income, peace of mind, is never just a product of action. It's the result of internal alignment. This is why people spend years going in circles, new diets, new routines, new cities, new people. But internally, the same narrative is playing, I'm not enough. Success is for others. If I try, I'll fail again. And so, even with effort, even with hustle, their results flatline. Hermstring is brutally honest. Until you change what you're aligned with, you cannot change what you experience. What does alignment mean here? In the context of Hermstring's framework, alignment is the resonance between your dominant inner beliefs and the outcomes you unconsciously allow. You may say you want abundance, but if deep down you still associate wealth with guilt or danger, you will subconsciously repel it. You may dream of love, but if your identity is fused with rejection or abandonment, you'll find subtle ways to sabotage intimacy. These internal laws are more powerful than any external action because, as Hermstring says, you don't manifest from what you do, you manifest from what you are. This is why 6 months of deep alignment work can change everything, because once you realign the source code, the reflection in the mirror must shift. Hermstring uses a compelling analogy. Trying to fix your reality without changing alignment is like trying to change your reflection by painting on the mirror. You'll feel exhausted, frustrated, nothing sticks. But if you shift the source image, the inner programming, the reflection shifts automatically. Now, many people resist this truth because it places the responsibility squarely within. It's easier to blame the economy, their boss, or even bad luck. But Hermstring reminds us that the law behind the laws does not bend to blame. It responds only to alignment. The good news is you don't need years of therapy or a life-changing event to realign. What you need is a methodical dismantling of your false beliefs and a consistent attunement to truth. This starts with awareness. Over the next 6 months, if you commit to observing your reactions, your triggers, your patterns, not judging them but witnessing them, you'll begin to uncover the hidden laws running your life. For example, if you notice that compliments make you uncomfortable, that's a sign that your internal law may be, I don't deserve to be celebrated. If you chronically procrastinate, perhaps the law is, if I try, I'll be judged. Once you find these unconscious laws, you can start rewriting them. One of Hermstring's exercises involves writing down a painful pattern you see in your life, like always ending up in toxic jobs, and then asking yourself, what would someone have to believe for this pattern to feel normal or inevitable? That question opens the doorway to the hidden script. Once the belief is identified, you don't argue with it. You observe it. You begin to see how it was installed, often in childhood, often by accident. And then you install something different. This is not done through forced affirmations or fake positivity. Hermstring is clear. You don't overwrite beliefs through declarations, you overwrite them through evidence. That means acting in small but real ways that contradict your old laws and support the new ones. If the old law says no one values my voice, the new law must be supported by you, speaking in rooms where you used to stay silent. If the old law says I'm a burden, the new law must be reinforced by allowing yourself to receive help without guilt. Over time, these actions become your new frequency, and reality has no choice but to mirror it. 6 months may seem short, but when you're working at the level of truth, change happens fast. Not because you're forcing outcomes, but because you're no longer blocking what's trying to come in. Hermstring writes, the universe does not delay your dreams. You do by aligning with their opposite, and that truth alone can collapse years of struggle into a few months of transformation. So the first step is to see the illusion, and to refuse to keep painting on the mirror. The real work begins with the image behind the glass. Are you ready to change that image? One of the most radical claims Owen Hermstring makes in The Law Behind the Laws is this: nothing in your life is random. Your successes, your setbacks, your delays, your breakthroughs, all of it unfolds on a very specific schedule. And that schedule is not dictated by chance, luck, or other people. It is governed by what Hermstring calls your inner blueprint, the subconscious pattern that operates beneath your actions, beneath your words, beneath even your goals. This is hard for most people to accept. We're conditioned to think that if we hustle more, plan better, or just try harder, we can force life to give us what we want. But if you look closely at your own history, you'll see that results never come from effort alone. Two people can do the same thing, say the same thing, and want the same outcome, but only one of them succeeds. Why? Because the one who succeeds is aligned with the result. The other is not. Hermstring illustrates this by comparing your reality to a projector. Your life, he says, is like a movie projected onto the screen of experience. Most people keep trying to change the movie by scratching the screen, but the film, the blueprint, is inside the projector. That's where the real power is. If you don't change the film, the scenes will keep repeating. What makes this blueprint so powerful is that it's not just made of conscious thoughts, it's made of emotional truths you've internalized, often before you were even aware. If at a young age you absorbed the message that love must be earned, your blueprint will be wired to create situations where you constantly have to prove your worth. If you were taught, directly or indirectly, that money is hard to come by, your reality will mirror that struggle no matter how many jobs you take or how much effort you invest. That's why Hermstring warns, do not confuse action with alignment. You can be working every hour of the day and still be perfectly aligned with failure. You can be visualizing success and still be energetically aligned with loss. This is why results often feel mysterious or unfair, because they aren't responding to what you consciously think or do, but to the deeper blueprint you're carrying within. So how do you uncover this hidden architecture? Hermstring gives a simple but confronting exercise. Write down one recurring frustration in your life, maybe it's relationships, career, health, or something else, and ask yourself, if this were exactly what I believed I deserved, what belief would have created it? Most people resist this question because it implies that their pain is self-created, but Hermstring urges us to move beyond blame and into power. Your reality is not your fault, he writes, but it is your creation. And if you created it unconsciously, you can recreate it consciously. Let's take an example. Say you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners. You might have convinced yourself that this is just bad luck. But if you go deeper, you might uncover a belief that says, closeness is dangerous, or if they get too close, they'll leave. That belief is the blueprint. It keeps recreating scenarios that prove itself right. So even if you want intimacy consciously, your subconscious is rejecting it. Your reality follows the blueprint, not the desire. What's incredible is that once you start shifting the blueprint, life adjusts fast. Hermstring shares stories of people who worked on realigning a single belief and, within weeks, experienced dramatic external changes, new jobs, reconciliations, financial breakthroughs. Why? Because the blueprint was no longer broadcasting resistance. The movie changed. This is why the 6-month window is so powerful. If you dedicate even 30 days to identifying and rewriting one major internal law, the shift can be profound. By month 3, you start to notice changes in how people respond to you, what opportunities appear, what emotions feel normal. By month 6, your outer world may look radically different, not because the world changed, but because you changed what you allowed to be real. One of the core lessons in the law behind the laws is this: reality is not objective, it's selective. It reflects your dominant beliefs back to you, like a loyal mirror. But most people spend their entire lives trying to edit the mirror. That's why 6 months of inner blueprint alignment can outperform 6 years of surface effort. There's a quiet truth here that Hermstring doesn't shy away from. You are already manifesting perfectly. Even if you don't like what you see, your life is an exact match to your dominant inner programming. That's not an insult. It's a doorway. If you're already this powerful unconsciously, imagine what becomes possible when you become conscious. So the question isn't whether the law works, it always works. The question is, what law are you aligned with right now? And are you willing to rewrite it? In The Law Behind the Laws, Owen Hermstring explains that belief isn't just a thought, it's a gatekeeper. It filters reality. It tells the universe what you're ready to receive, and what must remain outside your experience. This is why, according to Hermstring, most people never receive the things they ask for. Not because they don't want them badly enough, but because they haven't yet believed themselves into alignment with them. Here's a difficult truth. You never receive anything you haven't already approved deep within your subconscious. It doesn't matter how many affirmations you say or how many hours you visualize. If your inner gatekeeper, your belief system, has not stamped the outcome with a deserved or possible label, it will not cross the border into your reality. Hermstring writes, "The universe responds to belief, not begging," and he means it literally. This isn't metaphysical poetry, it's energetic mechanics. You are a receiver. Your beliefs are the frequency you're tuned into. The signal can't come through until you're on the same channel. Take the example of someone who constantly says, "I want financial freedom." They write it in journals, they repeat it in mantras, they pray for it. But if, deep down, they believe that people like them don't get rich, or that money corrupts, or that wealth leads to loneliness, their gatekeeper slams the door shut every time abundance knocks. Their conscious desire gets overruled by subconscious law. This is where Hermstring introduces one of his most powerful ideas. Desire without belief creates resistance. It doesn't create results. In fact, it often makes things worse. Because every time you desire something you don't believe you deserve, you widen the gap between who you are and what you want. That tension can become unbearable, and most people, rather than fixing the belief, simply stop dreaming. They lower their expectations to match their belief system, instead of upgrading the belief to match the dream. But what if you could do the opposite? What if you could reverse the formula and install belief first? Hermstring says this is not only possible, it's the only way transformation ever lasts. You can't force the fruit to grow, he writes, but you can change the soil. Belief is the soil. If you want to grow love, wealth, freedom, peace, it has to be planted in a belief system that can support it. He offers a practical exercise to start this process. Name the life you want in one sentence. Then ask, who would I have to believe I am for this to feel natural? Not exciting, not overwhelming, just natural. For example, I want to run a successful business that makes $20,000 a month. Now ask, what would I have to believe about myself for that to feel normal? Maybe the answer is, I'd have to believe I'm capable, that my ideas are valuable, that people trust me, that money comes easily. Now compare that with what you currently believe. Where's the gap? Hermstring explains that the gap is the work, not the website, not the product, not the funnel. The gap in belief is the only real block to success. Everything else is just tools, powerless until they're backed by alignment. To build belief, he introduces a method called micro-evidence stacking. Instead of trying to suddenly believe big, which triggers your inner skeptic, he encourages you to build belief slowly, like layering bricks. Start small. Did someone compliment your work? Stack it. Did you show up consistently this week? Stack it. Did you follow through on a tough decision? Stack it. Every piece of aligned action becomes a vote for a new identity, and identities are what beliefs are made of. You don't need 1,000 wins. You just need enough stacked evidence that your subconscious starts to ask, wait, what if this is who I am now? And once your subconscious believes it, the universe adjusts, not later, immediately. Because reality is not a place you go. It's a place you unlock. The door isn't guarded by fate. It's guarded by belief. That's why Hermstring says belief is never optional. You're either designing your beliefs, he writes, or you're living inside someone else's. Whether it came from childhood, religion, culture, trauma, your current life is shaped by a belief system, and that system is either your architecture or your prison. In just 6 months with daily belief work, conscious reinforcement, evidence stacking, and alignment exercises, you can shift the foundation. Hermstring is blunt about this. You don't need to become someone new. You need to believe the truth about who you already are. And that truth is powerful, worthy, creative, abundant. But unless you approve that truth, unless your gatekeeper lets it in, you'll never see it play out on your timeline. So if your life isn't changing the way you want it to, don't ask, what do I want? Ask, what am I still refusing to believe I deserve? Because until you reprogram that gatekeeper, nothing new can enter. In The Law Behind the Laws, Owen Hermstring explains something that most personal development books only touch on. Your emotions are not just reactions, they're blueprints. They don't follow your reality, they form it. And if you've been wondering why your external life still looks the same despite all your mindset work, it's likely because your emotional frequency hasn't changed. Hermstring writes, "The universe is not responding to your vision board. It's responding to how you feel about yourself when no one's watching." This is a hard pill to swallow, especially in a culture obsessed with outward progress, steps, schedules, strategies, and spreadsheets. But none of that matters if your internal frequency is still playing the same old song. So what is emotional frequency? It's the energetic signature you broadcast based on your dominant emotional state. It's the emotional color of your consciousness. If you walk around radiating guilt, fear, resentment, or shame, you will notice that your external experiences reflect those tones back to you, not as punishment, but as confirmation of your current script. This is why Hermstring warns against grinding your way out of a low-frequency state. He says, if you're building success with fear in your body, you're building a prison with golden walls. You might get the money, the partner, the career, but you'll still feel like you don't belong, that it could all disappear, that you're faking it. He tells the story of a client who reached every goal on his 5-year plan, yet lived in constant anxiety, not because anything was wrong on paper, but because he had programmed himself to only feel safe when he was struggling. Winning felt dangerous, calm felt unfamiliar, so his nervous system kept sabotaging his peace. What's the solution? According to Hermstring, you have to reverse the sequence society teaches. Most people live by this pattern: do, have, feel. They work hard, do, get the result, have, and then allow themselves to feel worthy, safe, proud, or joyful, feel. But this model keeps you chasing a feeling that's always out of reach. Hermstring teaches the opposite: feel, do, have, start by generating the emotional state now. Decide to feel grounded, loved, abundant, free, even if there's no external reason. Then take action from that place. This, he says, is how you collapse time and collapse resistance. He uses a metaphor that sticks with many readers. You can't microwave a frozen identity. If your emotions are frozen in fear, bitterness, or unworthiness, no amount of action will thaw the deeper belief system. You'll just keep recreating the same struggle with different costumes. That's why your emotions are your early warning system. They're not signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that your internal GPS is either aligned or distorted. If you feel dread when you look at your goals, something's misaligned. If your heart tightens when you imagine success, there's a wound that needs light, not more hustle. Hermstring dedicates an entire chapter to what he calls emotional rehearsal. He instructs his readers to practice the frequency of the life they want before it arrives. This doesn't mean pretending. It means training your nervous system to feel safe in the new reality. Want to feel free from scarcity? Then you must rehearse what it would feel like to truly trust your needs will be met. Want a healthy relationship? Then practice feeling safe, wanted, and secure now, so you don't unconsciously sabotage love when it shows up. In neuroscience, this is backed by research. The brain doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality when it comes to emotional rehearsal. If you consistently generate the emotional state, your brain begins to rewire for that experience. You literally become the person who expects that life, and what you expect becomes what you create. Hermstring says, most people are emotionally loyal to their trauma, not their future. That line hits hard, because when we think about emotional patterns, we rarely realize how often we're clinging to familiar pain simply because it's known. But transformation requires emotional courage, not just mental toughness. That's why he recommends building what he calls an emotional altar, a few minutes each day where you deliberately feel the version of yourself you're becoming. No distraction, no to-do list. Just pure energetic rehearsal. He suggests you ask yourself, what is the dominant emotional frequency I live in now? What is the dominant emotional frequency I would live in if everything I want had already arrived? What's the gap between the two? Am I willing to close that gap before I have the proof? Because here's the core law he teaches. Emotion creates momentum. Thought only creates possibility. You might think about success all day long, but if your emotions are still wrapped in fear and self-doubt, you won't take the kind of aligned, bold, clear action that changes reality. Your thoughts open the door, but your emotional frequency is what walks you through it. In just 6 months, with consistent emotional rehearsal, conscious feeling work, and frequency tuning, you can reshape the landscape of your inner world so profoundly that the outer world has no choice but to match it, not by force, but by resonance. As Hermstring puts it, your future is already formed, but you can't live in it until you feel safe in it. So ask yourself today, not what should I do, but what would I feel like if I believed it was already done? Because when you start living from that emotion, time bends, doors open, and your 6-month transformation begins, not with a plan, but with a feeling. Owen Hermstring makes a provocative claim in The Law Behind the Laws. Your new life costs your old one. No one tells you that. And it's true. Most self-help content focuses on adding things. More habits, more affirmations, more strategies. But what Hermstring invites us to examine is this: what parts of you must die for your next reality to be born? That question hits deep, because transformation isn't just about becoming more. It's about releasing who you no longer are. And that process is rarely easy, because the version of you that created your current life is deeply attached to its identity, no matter how much pain it carries. Hermstring says, the ego would rather be certain in suffering than risk peace in the unknown. In other words, the familiar is seductive, even if it's miserable. That's why people stay in broken relationships, unfulfilling jobs, or limiting belief loops. It's not because they don't want more. It's because they haven't yet become emotionally safe in the unknown version of themselves. So, how do you begin this death and rebirth process? Hermstring proposes a brutal but liberating exercise. Make a list of the traits, patterns, emotions, and behaviors that belong to your current identity. Be honest. List everything that keeps you looped in your present reality. Then ask, if I keep living by this script, where will I be in 6 months? This isn't about shame. It's about awakening. You can't change what you're still defending. You have to see it clearly. He tells the story of a woman who wanted to find love. She'd done the therapy, read the books, made her list of ideal traits in a partner. But nothing shifted. Until one day, Hermstring asked her, are you willing to let go of the version of you who expects love to abandon her? She paused and cried, because that identity had protected her, but it also kept love out. This is the paradox. Your identity isn't just who you think you are, it's who you think you must be to survive. Many people hold on to trauma-based personas because at some point, those versions did keep them safe, but now they act as energetic armor, blocking the very reality they're trying to attract. Hermstring explains, you can't enter the next chapter of your life wearing the costume of your wounds. That's why 6-month transformations begin not with action, but with surrender. With asking, who am I ready to stop being? Are you ready to stop being the overachiever who burns out to feel worthy? Are you ready to stop being the martyr who sacrifices everything to avoid abandonment? Are you ready to stop being the silent one who swallows their truth to keep peace? Because letting go is an act of self-respect. It says, I will no longer betray my becoming just to feel familiar. Now, here's the twist. Letting go doesn't mean fixing yourself. Hermstring is clear about this. He says, you are not a self-improvement project. You are a soul shedding layers. So the goal isn't to sculpt a perfect version of yourself. It's to peel back everything that isn't true anymore. And that takes honesty, compassion, and yes, grief, because even painful identities feel like home. This is why Hermstring talks about the emotional withdrawal symptoms of identity change. When you begin to let go of who you've been, your nervous system might panic. Your body might crave old patterns. Your ego might try to pull you back into safe chaos. That's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're detoxing. You're separating from the identity that once kept you small, afraid, reactive, and invisible. And that's why support, ritual, and presence are essential. Hermstring suggests creating a release ritual every week, a symbolic act to honor what you're letting go of. It might be journaling. It might be speaking out loud to your old self with gratitude. It might be burning a list of traits that no longer serve. The act itself is less important than the intention behind it. The point is to mark the ending, because only when you honor what's ending can you fully step into what's beginning. He offers this mantra, I bless the self that kept me alive, and I release the self that keeps me stuck. When you repeat that with sincerity, something shifts. You begin to feel the gap between who you've been and who you're becoming, and you realize you're no longer afraid to let go. This 6-month journey, then, becomes less about chasing a dream and more about dying into your truth. You don't need to figure everything out. You don't need to fix every wound. You just need to become unavailable for the identity that keeps reliving the same story. Because as Hermstring says, when you stop feeding the old you, the new you starts to breathe. And when the new you breathes, she writes new rules. She sees herself differently. She vibrates on a new frequency. And the universe, as it always does, responds not to who you were, but to who you are now. This is how you change your reality. Not by becoming someone else, but by finally remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And it all begins with one sacred decision. I will no longer live as a past version of myself. That decision? That's the beginning of the end and the start of everything. Now that you've begun releasing the outdated version of yourself, Owen Hermstring introduces the next radical step in the law behind the laws. Reality doesn't catch up to your effort. It syncs with your embodiment. In other words, reality isn't responding to how hard you try. It's responding to who you are being. This is where most people stall. They do the work, the journaling, the visualization, the discipline, but they do it as the same version of themselves that created the old results. And that's why their efforts don't translate into change. Hermstring teaches that the law behind all laws is alignment. And alignment means vibrational coherence. Your thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and self-image operating in harmony with the life you say you desire. But how do you align with something you haven't experienced yet? How do you act as if, when your bank account says otherwise, when your relationship still hurts, or when your past keeps pulling you back? The answer, Hermstring says, lies in this principle. Don't fake it till you make it. Feel it till it's familiar. You must familiarize your nervous system with the emotional and energetic signature of the life you want to live. That means you stop chasing evidence outside of you and start generating the feeling within you. Let's say you want to become someone who feels financially safe. Instead of obsessing over bills, debt, or income streams, Hermstring suggests you start your mornings by asking, what would a financially safe version of me feel today? How would they breathe? Walk? Respond to this situation. You train your body to recognize this new energetic pattern. You prime your field to expect safety. Over time, your actions and eventually your reality will follow. This is where embodiment becomes your greatest tool. You can't wait for the money, the relationship, the opportunity to start living differently. You must collapse time by becoming the person now. That means speaking like that version of you, with certainty and self-trust, dressing like them, not expensively but intentionally, organizing your home like them, with presence and dignity, making choices like them, no longer from fear but from power. Hermstring reminds us, if you don't believe you're worthy of the life you want, you'll sabotage it the moment it arrives. That's why identity must precede outcome. You have to grow into the version of you who won't just attract your dream life, but who will know how to sustain it. This is not spiritual bypassing. It's energetic calibration, and Hermstring is clear that this isn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about becoming deliberate about what you're rehearsing daily in your mind, emotions, and body, because most people are unconsciously rehearsing lack. They wake up and revisit their stress. They talk about what's not working. They expect disappointment. And every time they do that, they're reinforcing an identity that's incompatible with transformation. So Hermstring offers a game-changing exercise called future rehearsal. Each day for 6 months, you close your eyes and visualize not just the goal, but you living it fully. Imagine your tone of voice, your posture, your daily schedule, your habits, your relationships. Make it so vivid that your body can't tell if it's real or imagined. Then, and this is key, bring one element of that future into your current day. It could be responding to an email like your future self would, saying no to something that your old self would have tolerated, investing in something that aligns with your higher path, eating or sleeping in a way that respects your body's evolution. One micro-action daily, one bridge between now and next, and something powerful happens. You start feeling less like you're chasing your future, and more like you're remembering it, like it was always yours, and now you're simply catching up to its frequency. Hermstring writes, The soul never waits. Only the unaligned self experiences delay. So the delays you perceive aren't punishments, they're invitations. They're saying there is still something in you not yet in harmony with what you've asked for. And this is not bad news. It's liberating. It means you don't need the world to change. You only need to shift your resonance. Here's how you know you're aligning. You stop needing external validation. You no longer crave speed. You trust timing. You feel calm, even in the unknown. You attract opportunities that feel like confirmation, not compensation. You begin to recognize a quiet power rising in you, a non-reactive self who is no longer hustling for worth or begging the world to respond. Hermstring concludes this section with one of the most quoted lines from the book. You don't get the life you want. You get the life that matches who you are when no one is watching, and that's the real mirror. Who are you when no one's looking? Are you secretly still the version of you who's bracing for failure? Or are you becoming the version who walks like the answer has already been given? This is the law behind the laws. Reality bends to those who embody their future before it's visible. You have 6 months, not to hustle, but to inhabit the vibration of your new self. Because once you do, the universe doesn't have a choice. It must deliver what matches the frequency you've become. After aligning with the future version of yourself, something unexpected often happens. You face a powerful wave of resistance. Things break down, relationships strain, unexpected bills appear, or emotions surface that you thought you had already healed. To most people, this feels like failure. Like the method isn't working. But Owen Hermstring warns, when you begin calibrating to a new energetic frequency, your old life will tremble before it exits. This is not punishment, it's purification. This is what he calls the recalibration zone, the moment where the energetic field reshuffles to match the new self you've begun to embody. And everything that no longer resonates with that identity must dissolve. You're not being tested by the universe, you're being cleared. That toxic friend who suddenly distances themselves, they weren't aligned with your next level. The job opportunity that evaporates, it would have kept you small. The sadness that comes out of nowhere, it's the echo of a self you're shedding. Hermstring compares this to upgrading the operating system of a phone. Once you install the new version, old apps crash, settings reset, and you're forced to navigate the unfamiliar. But it's a sign of progress, not regression. So how do you move through this recalibration phase without sabotaging the transformation? The key is non-reactivity. When you react with fear or panic, you re-anchor yourself to the old frequency. But when you observe the chaos as evidence that your energy is shifting, you move through it with grace. You stop trying to control the symptoms and start trusting the source. Hermstring teaches a phrase that becomes your anchor during these moments. This is the storm before the new stability. He writes, if it's leaving your life, it's not meant to anchor your future. Let it go with reverence, not resistance. But this doesn't mean being passive. It means becoming an energetic steward. You tend to your inner field with awareness, especially when the outer world feels shaky. That means meditating even when your thoughts race, speaking affirmations even when your voice trembles, moving your body even when your emotions feel heavy, trusting the process even when the path is unclear. It also means recognizing the difference between feedback and failure. Let's say you launch a project and it flops. The old self says, "See, I'm not meant for this." But the recalibrated self says, "What belief did this outcome mirror back to me? And how can I shift it?" Every external result is just an echo of your dominant vibration. If it doesn't feel good, it's not a punishment. It's an invitation to fine-tune your signal. One powerful recalibration tool Hermstring gives is called the energy audit. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did I say or do today that felt aligned with my future self? What did I tolerate that the old version of me would have accepted? Where did I betray my own truth out of fear, guilt, or habit? What can I shift tomorrow to be more vibrationally coherent? By doing this daily, you stop outsourcing progress to external wins. You measure success by energetic clarity, not material confirmation. Because as Hermstring explains, manifestation isn't linear, it's exponential. Nothing happens, and then suddenly everything changes at once. That's how quantum leaps work. They don't obey time, they obey resonance. You stay consistent, not with grinding effort, but with frequency. You keep aligning, embodying, and recalibrating. And then one day, life bends. You meet the right person. An idea clicks. The money shows up, the job calls, your health shifts, peace arrives. And people say it happened overnight, but it didn't. It happened because you held the signal when everything tempted you to drop it. Hermstring says, the universe does not respond to timelines. It responds to timelines held in faith. So those 6 months? They're not a deadline. They're a devotion. You devote yourself to energy hygiene. You treat your inner state like sacred ground. And when setbacks come, because they will, you meet them not with panic, but with presence. You ask, what is this teaching me about who I no longer am? How can I honor this breakdown as a sign of deeper alignment? What version of me is trying to emerge through this discomfort? Because pain, when processed consciously, becomes power. This is how you transmute chaos into clarity. Not by avoiding it, but by meeting it with sovereignty. And when you do, you realize that what you thought was sabotage was just sacred rearrangement. Hermstring closes this topic with a simple but profound mantra. If it's shaking, it's shifting. Don't cling, rise. This is your moment. The turbulence means you're ascending. The friction means you're transforming. The unknown means you're finally off the script of survival and onto the map of soul-designed reality. So let it all fall apart if it must, because what rises from this is not just a new life. It's a new you. You've realigned your inner world. You've observed your thoughts, recalibrated your energy, released old patterns and stepped into the identity of your future self. You've endured resistance, breakdowns, and quiet revolutions within. And now you stand on the threshold of something most people never touch. Sustainable transformation. Not a lucky break, not a temporary high, but the creation of a new baseline for your reality. Owen Hermstring calls this final phase becoming the law. Because at some point, the law is no longer something you apply. It becomes something you embody. It's not a strategy. It's not a practice. It's a presence. Hermstring writes, the soul's goal is not to manifest things. It's to remember that it is the source of them. The law behind the laws isn't just about attraction. It's about embodiment. The outer world mirrors who you believe you are. So after 6 months of conscious alignment, you will notice something subtle but irreversible. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer ask, you command through your energy. You no longer doubt, you know. But this isn't about arrogance or control. It's about energetic responsibility. You become a lighthouse, not because you force light outward, but because you are aligned so deeply with your essence that you naturally illuminate. At this level, success doesn't excite you, because it's no longer unfamiliar. It's normal, natural, predictable. You've raised your standards so fully that the extraordinary now feels expected. You don't get overly attached to manifestations. They come, they go. You stay loyal to your frequency, because that's where the true power lives. This is what Hermstring refers to as frequency sovereignty. You no longer need conditions to dictate your state. You hold your state and let conditions adjust to it. And here's where something magical happens. The world starts bending around your presence. People treat you differently, not because you said something new, but because your energy now speaks louder than your words. Opportunities open without effort. Delays feel divine, not frustrating. You walk into rooms and feel like you belong, because finally, you do. You've taken up space in your own life. Hermstring shares in his book a powerful metaphor. When the wind is wild, you don't try to change the wind. You become the tree with deeper roots. This is what you've done. You've built internal roots so deep that the external storms no longer uproot you. But now comes the real question. Can you stay loyal to this version of you, even when the world offers you the old roles again? Because it will. The world will offer you the X, the job, the belief, the trigger, the scarcity. Not as punishment, but as a final check-in. Do you still want this? And now you can smile and say, no, thank you. That was for the version of me I no longer carry. That's when you realize you didn't just change your life, you changed your timeline. In the words of Hermstring, the law behind the laws doesn't bend reality, it bends time. Because when you shift your frequency, you step into a new timeline, one that was always waiting for you the moment you matched it. Now you understand why this process takes 6 months. It's not about the universe delaying your reward. It's about your soul preparing your capacity. Because rapid manifestation without energetic maturity leads to sabotage. But slow-rooted transformation? It becomes who you are. You don't need to repeat the mantras every morning now. Your life is the mantra. You don't need vision boards to remind you of your desires. They're unfolding before your eyes. You don't need proof anymore, because you are the proof. Hermstring encourages one final practice, the mirror of origin. Once a month, you stand in front of a mirror, not to judge, not to criticize, but to recognize. And you say slowly, I am not who I was. I remember who I am. This reality is not new, it is home. Because the greatest manifestation is not the money, the love, the body, or the career. It's the self you had to become to allow it all in. 6 months ago, you were wishing. Now you are walking. 6 months ago, you were doubting. Now you are declaring. 6 months ago, you were seeking the law. Now you are the law. Hermstring leaves us with this final note. Don't just live the teachings, become the one others ask to teach. Don't just use the energy, be the field that alters energy. Don't just manifest a life, birth a world from your presence. Because you are not here to chase outcomes. You are here to remember. You are the source that creates them all. So if you've made it this far, know this. You don't need another method. You don't need another mentor. You don't need more time. You need to keep doing what most never dare to. Hold the frequency until it holds you. Because now your life is no longer waiting. It's responding. If this awakened something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and hit subscribe. You're not alone on this path, and your energy just might be the light someone else needs today.